Not all elite boutique and bulge bracket banks sponsor either. In fact, the list of firms that sponsor will change from year to year. This year in 2020, we saw that for the people that are recruiting for the summer 2021 cycle, there were a lot of firms that actually sponsored visas last year and decided to stop sponsoring this year. So if you're an international student who's trying to break into investment banking, this is going to be a really, really important tip for you. You need to start very, very early in the recruiting process, because even though investment banking recruiting already happens very early for just everybody in general, right? Like if you want to recruit for a junior summer internship nowadays, you pretty much have to be ready to apply for a lot of these firms by halfway through your sophomore year in college, right? Sometimes even earlier. For example, right now we're in October 2020. As of 2+ weeks ago in September, the RBC Capital Markets already launched their application for summer 2022 internships, right? So that's almost 2 years away, right? Which is absolutely bonkers. But even though it's extremely early, as an international student, you don't have the luxury of waiting or starting late and kind of missing the boat, because you need visa sponsorship, right? And in order to get sponsored, you're only eligible to recruit for basically the elite boutique, bulge bracket, and middle market banks. Okay, so that's kind of like what I'm showing down here. And in fact, some of the middle market banks won't even sponsor, right? A lot of middle market banks don't sponsor. It's more so the elite boutique and bulge bracket banks. Not all elite boutique and bulge bracket banks sponsor either. In fact, the list of firms that sponsor will change from year to year. This year in 2020, we saw that for the people that are recruiting for the summer 2021 cycle, there were a lot of firms that actually sponsored visas last year and decided to stop sponsoring this year. I think partially because of COVID and because they're just hiring a lot fewer people, and so they're being a lot stricter about actually sponsoring visas, right? Regardless though, your best bet is going to be here with the elite boutiques and bulge bracket banks. And as you see in this timeline here, those firms, typically elite boutiques recruit the earliest, and a lot of them are done by, the second semester of sophomore year. Okay, and it happens very quickly. Now this is not 100% of the time, right? There are firms like Centerview that typically won't recruit until early fall of junior year, but the general rule of thumb though, most elite boutiques are going to go first and they're going to wrap up here. Bulge bracket firms, some will start second half of sophomore year. So some will start, in the summer of sophomore year, like Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan. But regardless, by the end of your sophomore year summer, if you still don't have an offer secured from one of these banks in these two categories, then you're really, really going to start to run out of options in terms of the banks that will actually sponsor. Some of the middle market banks will sponsor. Just one off the top of my head this year that I know a sponsor international student is Nomura, for example. However, it's a lot more hit or miss at the middle market level. And basically, the further you move downstream, the less likely it becomes that the firm will actually sponsor visas, okay? Because they won't have the scale or the infrastructure or the HR human resources department to be able to support that type of benefit, right? And so for non-international school students, sometimes even if they start recruiting late, like they realize they want to do investment banking a little bit later, and even if they can't get into these banks, that's totally fine, because they can maybe still land at a small regional boutique, and then basically try to go from there to a full-time somewhere else, right? Like they can recruit again for a full-time job at one of the bigger banks, as long as they get some summer internship experience. However, as an international student, you don't have the luxury of working for a regional boutique, because these firms almost all the time will not sponsor, right? So you're limited to this pool, which means you effectively have this very small window from the second half of your sophomore year to the first half of your junior year to land the internship, okay? And even more realistically, it's probably really, the second half of sophomore year to your sophomore summer, and you don't really want to wait until you're here, because by then your chance is going to be very, very low, right? And if you don't get a junior summer internship, then it's going to be very, very difficult for you to recruit for full-time, okay? Because most of these big banks, especially that actually sponsor, like the way they hire full-time analysts is probably 80 to 90%. In a normal year, 80 to 90% of the full-time offers will be given to their junior summer analysts, right, or their junior year summer analysts. And so if you perform well as a summer analyst, you get a return offer, right? Now, if they don't fill their entire class with their junior summer analysts, then they might go out and hire, there might be a group here or there that hires one or two people. Like they might have onesie, twosies available here in terms of the number of openings. But even then, you're still going to be competing against other students who did do a summer internship. Perhaps, at a smaller bank and they're trying to move up from middle market to bulge bracket or from middle market to elite boutique. Or maybe, like I said, some of the non-international students who started later and they ended up at a regional boutique and now they're trying to move up to a middle market or bulge bracket or elite boutique bank, right? And you're going to be competing against people like that who have investment banking experience over the summer. And so if you don't, there's going to be almost no reason for these firms to hire you over the other people, right? That's why as an international student, you have to get a summer internship after your junior year, and you have to get it from one of the top tier banks. And those banks start recruiting really, really early, more than a year in advance of when you're actually interning. And so you cannot miss that window. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And look, this is also why we get this, because the reason I want to talk about this is we actually get a lot of international students that reach out to us at Wall Street Mastermind. But the problem is they're coming to us either later in junior year, like second semester of junior year, or sometimes the summer of junior year, or sometimes they even come to us as seniors or when they're about to graduate, and they're asking us if we can help them break into investment banking. And the answer is always no, not because, we can't help them get better at networking or get better at technical interviews or get better at behavioral interviews, but solely because that's just how the timeline works. Like by the time they come to us, it's already too late because all of the banks that actually were considering sponsoring visas are already done hiring. So there's literally nothing we can do, right? It's outside of our control. And so hopefully this helps a lot of you out there who are watching this. Hopefully you're watching this video while you still have some time left to do the work that you need to do. But if not, then look, if you missed the boat in undergrad and you're an international student and you're still determined to break into investment banking, then there's two things you could do, right? Depending on when you're making this realization that you want to go into investment banking. One, you could potentially delay graduation by one semester or a year. Maybe you pick up a double major, you pick up a minor, whatever you need to do. And what that could do, depending on where you're at in the process, is it pushes you back by a year from a recruiting standpoint. So maybe, if you found out during your year 2 summer and you're like, oh my God, it's too late. Like you find out right here, right? You're like, oh my God, it's too late. I'm already smack in the middle of the recruiting window. I might miss out on the elite boutiques and bulge brackets already. You can actually delay graduation by half a year to a year, and then that'll actually push you back a whole year. So it's as if you're now in your year 1 summer, and then so now you're going to have enough time to prepare for the recruiting window again, right? So that's the first option. The second option is if you don't want to delay graduation, then honestly, the only other way for you to break into investment banking is probably you're going to have to go back to a top business school. You're probably going to have to work a couple of years, like find another job, another industry to break into first, work for 2 to 3 years, do a great job, and then apply for one of the top business schools. Ideally top 10 school, if not top 15, definitely top 20. Anything outside of the top 20 school is not going to make you eligible for some of these elite banks that we're talking about, the ones that actually sponsor, okay? Because you have to understand at the MBA level, at the MBA level, these banks are even more strict about only hiring from target schools because there are a lot fewer associates that they have to hire compared to analysts, so they can be a lot pickier about only hiring from the best schools. Okay, so hopefully this helps you guys. If you guys have questions or you're not sure about whether you still have enough time to break into investment banking as an international student, you can always just reach out to us, shoot us a quick email, ask us if you're still eligible, or if not and it's too late, what is the best path forward for you, and we're always going to get back to you as soon as we can. Okay? Hey there, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're looking for more customized advice that's tailored for your specific situation, then I invite you to book a free strategy session with our team at the link below. We'll talk to you soon.